Right, what have I got here? Right, it's an Astrolux today. Now, if you remember way back in the olden days, there's an Astrolux. I was quite impressed with that one, although some of the K1 fans on the reviews get a little bit feisty, but that's another matter. So Astrolux, been around for a long time. They don't seem to have their own website, so it was a bit hard to find sort of sensible documentation, but we'll see what you get in the box. Now, for this one, now the reason this is already open is I had a few UI issues. Now UI just stands for user interface, and that's how you interact with the flashlight. But I'll go into that later on. So the one I went for is the Nichia 219C. Now what's that about? That's the emitter, in other words the LED anyway. There's three options. You can have like an XP-G3. I think there's a neutrally white, which is 6000K, and then like an ice white, which is 7000K, and that's just the temperature of the beam. In other words, the higher that figure is, the more white light you're getting, and the lower it is, the more of a sort of a neutral sunlight effect that you're getting. Now I prefer that, so I went for the Nichia, which gives you around a 5000K value. I prefer that. It looks more like, I mean, at the end of the day, during daylight, if you look around, you presume incorrectly that, oh, the light must all be white. It isn't. There's a yellow sort of tint to it. If you were able to look at the sun safely, you would see that that's the colour that's coming off it. So anyway, so let's get in the box here. And like I didn't need to open this because I've had this open and I've carried it for a week on purpose to make sure I understand the UI. So let's see what you get. Right, so you've got a little manual here. Now, as usual, I shall show you that quickly. You can pause that if you really want to look at it. There's the UI, which I'll go into later because it's worth mentioning, and then there's all the modes. Now, if you notice, you get a different output depending on which emitter you pick. So, for example, you see you've got the XP G3 there. The maximum on turbo is over 2000 lumens. However, on the Nichia, which I have, 1630. Now what that means is you're not going to get the maximum output, but there's very little difference between that to the human eye, unless you're comparing them side by side. There's not a lot of difference, especially in throw, because this isn't really a thrower. So we'll put that to one side. Now what do you get in here? I presume this is a lanyard. Yeah, okay, so a lanyard and a clip. Let's take that out. Oh, and it's got the murder spike, which we'll go into. So there's your clip. Now it looks like a deep carry, so that's nice to see. Now deep carry just means you've got this extra section, so effectively there's less of the flashlight popping out by the time that hits the top of your pocket. So there's your pocket there, so it's going to come up to there, and depending on how you fit that. So that's nice to see. It feels pretty decent. You know, I was looking at some of these clips recently and they're useless, but no, that's fair enough. I don't like this. All I do this as well. I don't like this here. The reason I don't like this is because what happens is, let's say this is your pocket. You push it down into your pocket, and what happens is it gets caught underneath that, and you can't get it to the deep carry status. I prefer to get rid of that, so just slide straight up to deep carry, because when are you going to want to half carry it? It just doesn't make sense. So, you know, I'm not happy about that, but I'm not going to go too far into that. So there's your lanyard. Yeah, usual quality. Actually, feels lined, and yeah, it's actually pretty decent. And there's your cinch, which is removable through a tension spring there, and then this is the section that goes through the small opening on the end of the flashlight. So nice to see. I don't use lanyards because I'm a bit of a bushcraft guy, so as with knives and flashlights, it's either in my hand or back in the sheath or in the pocket. Do not leave stuff lying around because that's how you lose it. What else you get here? Right, you also get two O-rings. Nice to see. So the O-rings go between two machined and threaded parts, so there'll be a threaded part at the top and the bottom where they come together. Now the whole point of these is to retain waterproofing, and I'll go into those ratings in a minute when I pick up the unit, but it's nice to see that you get two free ones, because what can sometimes happen is if these aren't seated properly or they're slightly off and you thread those two sections together, it shears this and breaks it. So it's nice to see. They're not the super thick ones, I think they're the 1 mil, but that's fine. So nice to see you get them. I'll pop them with the manual. I don't think there's anything else. That's just rubbish, bit of silicone, do not eat, remember. And I think that's it. Yeah, there's nothing else in the box there. I'm not a big fan of these things. I think that they're more of a gimmick. That's it. They call this an attack hammer. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to screw that into there. Right, bear with me here and imagine that you're Steven Seagal or something, right? Because it's, if anyone who's been in a real fight knows it's not this simple, but okay. Right, so you've got that on and you're going walking the dog or whatever. You're supposed to be able to use that like a ninja, untrained. Bear in mind you're untrained. Technically, you could say that's an offensive weapon, so I'm going to take that out because I don't want an offensive weapon. But I think that's of limited usability. In a fight, it's hard enough grappling with someone with your bare hands and stopping them from punching you in the face, let alone simultaneously going, well, what I'll do is I'll just do this, and then you're not getting much reach. You'd have more reach like that with a knife on it, but it hasn't got that. It's all about reach and angles and things. So anyway, there you go. But you can take this out. I'm going to throw that away. It's useless. You're better off going to self-defense or something, and then what you can do is you can actually take this out and change the diameter of this, but you can use this to put into tripods and what have you. Right, so that's the little bits and pieces that come with it. So let's get on with the unit itself. I like it. It looks nice. I just wish this was recessed. I'm getting a bit sick and tired. As you know, and I'll go and get one. There's one there. There is a Convoy S2 Plus, which I really like. I like tail clickers. Whole reason is you can't accidentally turn them on. Okay, so look, theoretically you can if something's pointy in your bag, because you go hiking or whatever, or you're on an operation, you get to camp and you realise that because it's got a side button like this has, it's been accidentally pressed in your pocket. I've done it loads of times, even with the skill hunts and loads of different units, and the bloody batteries run out. So then what do? You've got to go scrounging your mates for batteries and looking like an idiot, or go for a pee in the dark. So I like a tail clicker for that reason. It's safer. But the downside with a tail clicker obviously is it increases the overall length of the unit. And it means you've got to have this so you can have half presses to go through modes and things like that. And some people don't like that. It's a bit out of the way. So fair enough, I understand that. So this is going for the more standard look. It's pretty light. So we'll go through the specs. So Astrolux S42. Now this is a quad emitter. So what's going on here? So instead of obviously one LED, so when I say, emitter, what I'm on about is just the LED. So there's 4 here. The reason there's 4 is because obviously there comes a point when you can't push much more out of these with an 18650 battery. So what you do is you just add more emitters and then you get more lumens in total. So that's what they're aiming for. And they've got a specific reflector on here. And I'll quickly go through the reflectors once I've gone through a bit more about this unit. So it's using an 18650 battery. So here I have an 18650. So they're pretty big. They're nice beefy batteries, and you get quite a lot out of them. This is actually a Samsung 30Q, but it's just got an ODB wrap on it there. I wonder if that's ODB the wrestler.
Yeah, liquid courage.
Probably not, I would like to think. Right, so we'll get that in, and then while I open this up, I'll show you. So there, can you see there? There's your O-ring. So it's between these 2 threaded parts, and that's nice and smooth. You can see they've put on a little bit of silicone grease there, which is fine, and that helps keep a little bit of the waterproofing, but it's not too loud. A little bit at the end there. It looks okay, and let's check the spring. The end looks cheap, but that's an okay spring. It's a little bit weak. Bear in mind, on some emitters you're going to be wanting to push nearly 2000 lumens, but okay, it's a little bit weak, but it'll do the job, I'm sure. Nice thin body, yeah, no problems. Let's have a look down the bottom. Now the reason you can screw this top and bottom, even though you just want to put the battery in here, is because you can get replacement tubes. This is obviously an 18650 battery tube, which is going to fit an 18650, but you can get shorter ones, which I'm not going to go into because I want to, review this on its own. And then the top there has the O-ring there, a little bit of noise there. That looks okay, nice and clean, no rubbish. Now that's a much better spring. Why couldn't they put that spring at the bottom? Never mind. Okay, so you've got a nicer spring up there and a nice PCB board there, nice and clean, no gunk. So we'll get that And then we'll pop the battery in. Now that should be charged. So positive to the top, unlike OLEDs, which all seem to be the opposite way around. I've never understood why, but there you go. So let's get that back on. So like I say, I've gone for the Nichia, and it's the 219C. There's different models. There's the B and the C and whatever. I find it a tiny little bit green, the tint, but that's probably my eyes. Everyone is going to have their own opinion on that. Now, one of the features of this is it has what they call a breathing light. In other words, that's like, really, it's just causing a parasitic drain on the battery, but it's not going to, if you charge these regularly every 16 months, you shouldn't have to worry about that. But that's a nice little feature. It's a bit more gimmicky. Have I ever used that? No, not really. They did the same on the, if I can find it, the GT Mini. Here's the GT Mini. So you can see that's got a little gimmicky light on as well. Do I use that? No. I mean, the whole point of them generally is so you can see them in the dark, but can you see that in the dark? No. So it has to be facing you, so what's the point? So that's a little limited use, but it's a nice little feature to see anyway. A bit more gimmicky than everything else. Rather than doing that, I'd rather take that rubbish out, recess this a bit like a zebra light so you can't knock it. Would that not be better? But that's just my opinion. And the reason this section is a little larger than what you'd expect, if you look, there's no protruding bump on something like the Convoy, is because they've added something in here. They've got micro USB. Now here's the problem I have. These daft flaps, look, you knock them with the fingernail and then they're open. That's it. Now it's flapping about. You're losing waterproofing by doing that, and I've explained this before. If I can find one, let's have a look. Even something simple like the hiker light. Let's have a look. Here's the hiker light. Now this has USB charging, so you're probably thinking, oh, where's the flap? There is no silly flap. Look, if you open this, bear in mind it's behind a watertight O-ring. Aha, look, you can charge that and it doesn't lose its waterproofing. So Astrolux, please, can you do that? Instead, I'm not a fan of these daft flaps, because what happens is you lose the ratings. This is an IPX8. You can drop that in 2 meters of water, no problem. I love that. This one isn't. The rating this is an IP65. The 6 stands for dust protection, obviously, and the 5 means it's, I mean, you can use the word, I won't use the word waterproof because it's not waterproof, it's water resistant. I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say it's waterproof, because it isn't, and especially once that's knocked in your pocket. Now it isn't. You drop that in a puddle by accident and it's going to go straight into there, I would suggest. So it's a nice feature to have. So what it means is you can charge this through a wire. So for example, if you wanted to charge this, so I have one here, so we'll pop this in and we'll see if it charges. There, that's charging. So what does this light mean? Right, so if it's apparently if it's less than 50%, you get a red flash like this. Okay, so then once it raises the battery to 50% or more, you're going to get a green flash. And then eventually, once it's fully charged the battery, you'll get a strong full green, so no flashes. So there's your 3 functions on that. So I suppose the LED in here does have a function when charging. And bearing in mind, if that's less than 50%, I better change that to a different battery for this review, because I want to show you on turbo. So we'll take that out. So nice feature to have. I like USB charging, but I just think there's other ways they could go around doing it. I think that's a poor implementation of having a daft flap. I'm not a big fan of them. So there, pop that in. So micro USB, it's got a 1.5 impact rating. In other words, if you drop that from around 1.5 meters, that's about standard. It should be okay. Depending on what you drop it on. If you drop it on tungsten, it may have a different effect, but on concrete, you should be okay. So nice to see. So far, this is shaping up to be a decent unit. You can get 1600 to 2000 lumens, depending on the emitter. You've got a quad emitter. It's looking pretty good. It's pretty sort of compact. Bear in mind, if we ignore this bit here, look, that's pretty compact. Yeah, it's a bit bigger up the top because of the USB, but I'm pretty impressed so far. But there's the UI to talk about. But before we do that, we need to do the usual. We need to discuss what's going on with this lens, because this is a TIR lens. So I want to make sure you know what you're getting. So if I can find a pen, there you go. Right, so you've got 3 basic types of lens. So you see that one there, that's a smooth reflector. So you've got your LED and then the bowl is smooth. So what's happening there? Okay, so here's your thing with the battery in, and there's your PCB and your LED. So generally light's just going to go pretty arbitrary forward, and there's not a lot of control over that, is there? So if you want to get maximum distance, you put a smooth reflector over. So what happens is when that comes out, you get your spill, which is direct from the LED, but then bouncing around and focused within this, you get your spot. So when that hits a wall, in fact, I'll show you that. I'll turn it on. Right, you can see there, from here to here's your spill. Now this is your spot. This is what's being projected forward. So you're going to get maximum distance by using a smooth reflector like that. The problem is, with a smooth reflector, even at low setting, I mean, I've got that quite low. You know, if I've got it on turbo or something, it's even worse. You're obscuring detail up close, and it's a bit annoying if you're trying to change a fuse or work on a car. That's probably not ideal. Yeah, you get loads of distance, but it's ruining detail. So, is there a way around that? Well, there is, as it happens. Well, there's a compromise, I should say. So let's say you've got the same setup with your reflector, but instead of smooth, you use what's called an OP reflector. OP just stands for orange peel. Now what they're saying in orange peel, it mimics the aberrations of an orange peel. So for example, if you have a close look at that, can you see there's like little pits and bumps? So that it's no longer smooth. It's reflective, but it's no longer smooth. So what it does is instead of getting a beam profile like that, you get one which is more like this. It's more smoothed out. There's a transition. Now, you're getting more detail, correct, but you're not getting as much throw, so it's not going as far. So can you see the way it's not as ruining on detail, and there's more of a transition. There's less of a marked difference in zones there, you can see. So what happens is you're getting the best of both worlds. You're not getting as much throw, but you're lessening the effect on detail. Now your other option is, if you're working up even closer and you want a little bit more sort of nice spread, is to forego this altogether. So what you do is, there's your LED, and you plonk over the top a solid, so this isn't empty, okay, so it's a solid medium. So it's a TIR, stands for total internal reflection. In other words, the light is bouncing around with a pretty low loss of light during this process, and then it comes out how you define. I mean, a lot of the TIR reflectors, if I can find, I've got a skill hunt here, so I turn that off. There, you can see that one's almost got like a honeycomb effect. So what it's doing is, it's lots of little, then I'm not going to call those lenses, because they're changing the way that the light exits this section, but all the light hits here in a uniform manner, and then it's spread how you want. Now conversely, on this one, it's more of a spreader. So what's happening is, it's spreading out, and I'll show you side by side. So here's the thrower, so we'll put that on, and then compare that to the skill hunt. I can see the difference. You've got a marked spot there, whereas here it's almost entirely, especially if I put it back a tiny bit, it's almost entirely spread out. There's very little change in taking away detail and things like that. So that's nice to see. I quite like a TIR up close. Obviously, if it's distance you're interested in, you can't have that. You know, something like the GT Mini, look at the size of that smooth reflector. That's designed to throw the maximum distance, so that's fine. That's what that's for. So, like I say, TIR, the other advantage, actually, if you look at the distance between the LED and the output, you've got to have this big reflector here, whereas with a TIR, it's a very slimline effect. So it keeps the unit down. So that's what's keeping this small. So far, so good, eh? Right. Now, I want to talk about UI hell. I'm sorry, but I have to say the UI on this is, if I was being nice, I would say it's challenging. If I was being horrible, I would say it's a bloody nightmare. Right, I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible and as concise as possible, because even I hardly understand it. Right, okay, so hold this down. Start from the beginning. Right, that's off and technically electronic lockout. You can't get it on, doesn't work. Right, so to make it work, you've got to hold the button down. Then you get the breathing light. Now you can use it. So from here, if you press the button, you're in group 1 and you get moonlight. So that gives you 1 lumen. You get about 14 days runtime from that, depending on which cell you're using, okay? So 1 lumen's brilliant, and it's nice and spread out. You could use that to read maps and not give away your location. Also, it's not too bright where it's going to ruin night vision. So generally for myself, you know, night vision for me is ruined if I get a bright light in my face and then it lasts about 10 minutes. And especially if you, I mean, people with headlamps will know this. If you shine it in your buddies' faces, it ruins their night vision. So a moonlight mode is an essential for me. I have to have it. So, and it's down to 1 lumen. Brilliant. Well done, Astrolux. I like to say that. So your next mode, if you press it again, is called low. And you get 16 lumens. And you get about 6.5 days runtime out of that. That's brilliant. I quite like that. That's still pretty bright. Come on. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. Then you get middle one, which is pretty bright. Middle one, I think, is around 125 lumens. You get about 30 hours, 29 to 30 hours out of that. Then you've got middle two, which is 210. Bit of a strange jump there, I don't know why. 9.5 hours-ish out of that. Then you get high one. Okay, so that's high one. That's 475 lumens. You get about 4.8 hours out of that. Nice, I can start to feel the heat coming from the LED. Then high two, which is 630 lumens. So you get about 2 hours out of that. That's pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with that. And then turbo, because this is the Nichia, I'm going to get 1600 lumens out of it. They quoted as 1630, but let's just say 1600. So if I press it again, right, there's your turbo. That's massively bright. That's beautiful. And it's a lovely tint, is there? Nice sun-like tint. The only problem is, obviously, that's going to step down after about 45 to 60 seconds. The reason being is it has to. Depending on the temperature, sometimes I've noticed after about 20 seconds it'll start jumping. I'll leave that running just to show you, and because I want to check the heat. So it's already getting very hot, but that's perfectly understandable. So we'll leave that running there. So there's your turbo. Now you get 2 hours out of that. So you're probably thinking, well, I thought on high 2 you got 2 hours. Well, you get 2 hours on this, but then it's stepping down, right? So what it's doing is it can't maintain the high output, so it has to step down for heat reasons, otherwise this is going to nuke itself. So already that's too hot to the touch. I wouldn't be able to hold that now. I'd have to hold it like that. So you're going to use turbo on a limited functionality basis. So we'll turn that off just for now. Oh, right, so we're back to moonlight, and I'll put that down. Also, so far you're probably thinking, what's he whinging about? Well, you'll find out. Okay, so let's go through those again, because when you're at turbo, get a turbo, there's turbo. Now you can go to tactical strobe, but you've got to hold it down. So you go through all these. Right, now can I have, now it's gone off, right? So we'll put it back on again. Right, moonlight. Let's go to turbo. Right, there's turbo. Right, so now how do you get the other modes? Well, what you've got to do is you've got to hold that down. Then you go to turbo. Now you can go to the other modes. Right, so you've got strobe. So can you see it's already starting to get difficult? I'm going to hold that over because people whinge. So there's your strobe, and then you've got battery check, which makes no sense to me. So battery check is supposed to flash out how much battery you've got. Now, some battery checks do it in 2 different ways. The first way is a percentage way, and the second way is a voltage way. This one, you've got 1 flash means 20, 2 means 30 to 40, then 5 means 100. That doesn't make any sense to me. And then it doesn't do it by voltage, so we'll turn that. And then you've got a bike mode, which is steady, but then you get flashes in it there. So we'll go back to normal there. So back to moonlight. So already it's getting complicated. Right, so you're probably thinking, well, how do you just turn it off? Interesting question. So let's go through the modes there. So there's the mode. So at any point, if you're wanting to turn that off, how do you turn it off? Because if you hold it down, right, there, it's off. So let's say you go to turbo. So we'll turn that on. We're on moonlight. Right, now how do I turn it off? You can't, because if you hold the button down, if you press it once, it's going to go up a mode. And if you hold it, it's going to go to turbo. Right, now can I get out? Hold that down. Right, now you can get out. So can you see the problem? If you bring this out of your pocket, moonlight, I wanted turbo. Right, let's go to turbo. Right, now I've got turbo. Now I can turn it off. Now I can turn it off. I can't turn it off because now it's going to another mode. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. I mean, I understand what's going on, and it's the frailties of the design of the UI, but a standard user shouldn't have to do that. And what makes it worse is if you try and do a double click, it gets even worse. So let's say you're running, you think, I'll just double click for turbo. Oh, am I in turbo? Nobody knows. Now you're in what's called group 2, which has completely different settings. So I'll show you those. You've got low, which is 16 lumen, middle 2, which is 210, high, which is 475, high 2, which is 630. Where's turbo? Oh, you can't get the turbo. Turbo no longer exists, but you've got no idea why. So can you see the problem there? As a flashaholic, I can deal with that. A normal person isn't going to want to deal with that. And I know I complain about Olight saying to tell people what they want rather than let them make their own decisions. I now understand why to a degree. If I was to give this to a non-flashaholic, there'd be an UI hell. They wouldn't know what the hell's going on. And as I say, how do you turn it off straight away? You can't. So there's too many modes in Group 1. You can't turn it off properly. The battery check's weird. The bike flashes not enough. I'm not a fan of the UI. So let's turn this off if I can work out how to turn it off. Right there, we're off, half off anyway, that's still running. Phew. Okay, so let's go over some of the basics. It's not waterproof, but yeah, you're getting the micro USB. It's a nice quad emitter. I love Nichia. It makes me smile. It's a nice tint, and it's got a good colour reproduction index, so I like that. Breathing light gimmick, don't really need that. Ridiculous death hammer thing on the end, I'm not going to use that, going to throw that away, ridiculous. Thing is, this is cheap and the build feels nice. I just wish they would fix this ridiculous UI. This could be so much better. Fix the UI and come up with a better flap that doesn't just flap around with a, if a feather touches it, it comes flapping out. You've done a lovely job on the emitters. This feels solid. It just needs a bit of work. Get rid of this daft hammer. Nobody's going to use that in real life. And fix the UI. So I'll go outside and I'll show you some beam shots, but I have genuinely carried this for more than a week daily and used it many times for many different tasks to make sure I wasn't being negative about it. I like it. I love the beam. The UI just let it down. So I'm going to give it 6 out of 10. Big room for improvement, I think. So 6 out of 10 is not bad. It's cheap. They just need to fix that UI. Come on. Get it sorted, Astrolux. Anyway, let's get outside and have a look at the beams.